Hello? Looks like we might be live. Let me just see here. Make sure everything's up and running and going good. Go to my channel. Alright, yeah, it looks like we are live now. Yeah. Oh, hi, LP Fail. Thanks for joining us. Hello, Haxer82. Thanks for joining us. Here we go. Let's wait for a few more people to populate, and then I will. As I'm doing that, I'm gonna make sure I put a post, remind everyone that we're streaming right now. I just want to apologize for being 20 minutes late, because I just finished recording the last episode of Manda-LORE, and Saturdays are kind of my day where I rush around and try to make sure everything's all set for my video until my wife gets home from work. Because then I actually have to go do, adult things, like maintain my house and go grocery shopping and things like that. So, let me just get some notifications up going here while we're waiting for more people to come in and watch the stream. So we'll go to the community tab. Say, hey, everyone, I'm live now. Come on and join in the literary fun. And then paste the link. And then we're going to go to the Manda-LORE Facebook quick, and we'll paste the link there. Yes. Okay. Hey everyone, we're live now. Come on and join story time. Juice boxes and pretzels not included. And now everybody on Facebook will know, and I've notified people on YouTube. And alright, we got 22 people watching now, so that's good. I'll just wait for a couple more people, and then I'll get started, because I don't want, to start right now and then like a bunch of other people come in and then, they're like halfway. So I'll give it like 5 more minutes and then we'll start. I know I'm already late, and for the people who are just joining us, I was just apologizing for being late, because I just finished recording an episode of Manda-LORE, and that had 112 different narration files, so that took me quite a while. And I was also explaining how I'm just trying to get all my stuff done for Manda-LORE before my wife comes home, and then I have to go do adult things, so. But we'll have a good 3 hours to read here. So, before we start, as in regards to how far we'll get, I'm basically going to read for the next 3 hours or so, and as far as we get, I'll get to a good cutoff point, and then we'll stop there, and then I can always pick it up at a different time, and I'll notify you guys when I go do Want to go do that stream, but it's not going to be a today thing. I think I have the audiobook for this novel, and it's over 13 hours, if I remember correctly. So we're not going to be finishing this today. Sub money, yes, it does take me a very long time to make my videos, depending on the length. The Bellator class video that I made a few weeks ago, that didn't take very long because there's not a lot of information on the Bellator class, so... well... Hexer82. I'm pretty sure I've got a resident troll that follows me and just gives me dislikes because they either dislike my views or they dislike Legends or whatever, but I usually just ignore that stuff. A majority of my likes, my dislike to like ratio on a majority of my videos is positive, so that's all I care about. Alright. Gonna give it a probably 2 more minutes here. Isn't this the book that mentions Grievous can move his arms 20 times a second? It's either this one or Labyrinth of Evil. I can't remember. They're all kind of like a trilogy. Well, when you're enhanced with cybernetics, you know, what's nice about the Legends Grievous is he makes full use of his cybernetics and isn't very limited. Some people think that makes him OP, and yeah, I can't disagree, but I like having an OP General Grievous. He was the Darth Vader of the, of the Clone Wars back in the day. He's been toned down quite a lot since then in some of the newer material, but, that's in part to what George Lucas wanted for the character, so... I don't think he can use 6 lightsabers. He can use at least 5 because he uses the uses feet, and he needs at least 1 foot to stand on. Apparently the stream is lagging for Pip. Is it lagging for anyone else? I'm guessing the silence means it's working for everybody else. Alright. So we're approaching on 12:30 here. We've got 16 people watching. That's a good enough amount of time. It's a good enough amount of people, and if more join in, then well, I'm late anyway, so. All right, it is better now. All right, good. Yes, Savage Panda 85. Thrawn did study Grievous, and he even had Grievous's faceplate in his art collection. All right, well. Since it's approaching on 12:30 here, I think we're gonna get started. I've got it open to the introduction, and well, the story today, Pip, is the Revenge of the Sith novelization, which I'm going to start in 1 minute here. Yes, I would advise for immersion that at least after we get to the introduction, you get the Battle of Coruscant theme queued up. Hola, Mirza 1898. Alright, it's 12:30, basically, in 4 seconds. So, here we go. Star Wars Revenge of the Sith by Matthew Stover. Introduction. This story happened a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It is already over. Nothing can be done to change it. It is a story of love and loss, brotherhood and betrayal, courage and sacrifice, and the death of dreams. It is a story of the blurred line between our best and our worst. It is the story of an end of an age. A strange thing about stories, though this all happened so long ago and so far away that words cannot describe the time or distance, it is also happening right now, right here. It is happening as you read these very words. This is how 25 millennia come to a close. Corruption and treachery have crushed 1,000 years of peace. It is not just the end of a republic. Night is falling on civilization itself. This is the twilight of the Jedi. The end starts now. Excuse me, I had a carbonated beverage before reading this, but that's not gonna. I'm not gonna let that interfere again. All right. Introduction. The skies of Coruscant blaze with war. The artificial daylight spread by the capital's orbital mirrors is sliced by intersecting flames of ion drives, punctuated by starbursts, explosions. Contrails of debris raining into the atmosphere become tangled ribbons of cloud. The night-side sky is an infinite lattice of shining hairlines that interlock planetoids and track erratic spirals of glowing nets. Beings watching from rooftops of Coruscant's endless cityscapes can find it beautiful. From the inside, it's different. The gnats are drive glows of starfighters. The shining hairlines are light scatter from turbo laser bolts, powerful enough to vaporize a small town. The planetoids are capital ships. The battle from the inside is a storm of confusion and panic, of galvanized particle beams flashing past your starfighter so close that your cockpit rings like a broken annunciator. Of the boot soul shock of concussion missiles that blast into your cruiser, killing beings you have trained with, and eaten with, and played with, and laughed with, and bickered with. From the inside, the battle is desperation and terror, and the stomach-churning uncertainty of the whole galaxy is trying to kill you. Across the remnants of the Republic, stunned beings watch in horror as the battle unfolds live on the HoloNet. Everyone knows that the war has been going badly. Everyone knows that everyone knows that more Jedi are killed or captured every day. That the Grand Army of the Republic has been pushed out of system after system. But this? A strike against the very heart of the Republic? An invasion of Coruscant itself? How can this happen? It's a nightmare, and no one can wake up. Live via the HoloNet, beings watch as the separatist droid army flood the government district. Beings watch the separatist droid army flood the government district, yes. The coverage is filled with images of overmatched clone troopers cut down by remorselessly powerful destroyer droids in the halls of the Galactic Senate itself. A gasp of relief. The troopers seem to beat back the attack. There are hugs and even some quiet cheers in living rooms across the galaxy as the separatist forces retreat to their landers and streak for orbit. "We won," beings tell each other. "We held them off." But then new reports trickle in. Only rumors at first, that the attack wasn't an invasion at all. That the separatists were trying to take the planet. That this was a lightning raid on the Senate itself. The nightmare gets worse. The Supreme Chancellor is missing. Palpatine of Naboo, the most admired man in the galaxy, whose unmatched political skills have held the Republic together, whose personal integrity and courage prove that the separatist propaganda of corruption in the Senate is nothing but lies, whose charismatic leadership gives the whole Republic the will to fight on. Palpatine is more than respected. He is loved. Even the rumor of his disappearance strikes a dagger into the heart of every friend of the Republic. Everyone knows it. Every one of them knows it in her heart, in his gut, in its very bones. Without Palpatine, the Republic will fall. And now confirmation comes through. And the news is worse than anyone could have imagined. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine has been captured by the Separatists, and not just the Separatists. He is in the hands of General Grievous. Grievous is not like the other leaders of the Separatists. Newt Gunray is treacherous and venal, but he's Neimoidian. Venality and treachery are expected, and in the Chancellor of the Trade Federation, they're even virtues. Poggle the Lesser is Archduke of the Weapon Masters of Geonosis, where the war began. He is analytical and pitiless, but also pragmatic, reasonable. The political heart of the Separatist Confederacy, Count Dooku, is known for his integrity, his principled stand against what he sees as corruption in the Senate. Though they believe he's wrong, many respect him for the courage of his mistaken convictions. These are hard beings, dangerous beings, ruthless and aggressive. General Grievous, though. Grievous is a monster. The Separatist Supreme Commander is an abomination of nature, a fusion of flesh and droid, and his droid parts have more compassion than what remains of his alien flesh. This half-living creature is a slaughterer of billions. Whole planets have burned at his command. He is the evil genius of the Confederacy, the architect of their victories, the author of their atrocities. And his durasteel grip has closed upon Palpatine. He confirms the capture personally in a wideband transmission from his command cruiser in the midst of the orbital battle. Beings across the galaxy watch and shudder and pray that they might wake up from this awful dream, because they know what they're watching live on the HoloNet is the death of the Republic. Many among these beings break into tears. Many more reach out of comfort for their husbands or wives, their creshmates or kin-triads, their younglings of all descriptions, from children to cubs to spawn fry. But here is a strange thing. Few of the younglings need comfort. It is insisted that the younglings who offer comfort to their elders. It is instead the younglings who offer comfort to their elders. Across the Republic, in words or pheromones, in magnetic pulses, tentacle braids, or mental telepathy, the message from the younglings is the same. Don't worry, it'll be alright. Anakin and Obi-Wan will be there any minute. They say this as though these names can conjure miracles. Anakin and Obi-Wan, Kenobi and Skywalker. From the beginning of the Clone Wars, the phrase Kenobi and Skywalker has become a single word. They are everywhere. HoloNet features of their operations against the Separatist enemy have made them the most famous Jedi in the galaxy. Younglings across the galaxy know their names, know everything about them. Follow their exploits as though they are sports heroes instead of warriors in a desperate battle to save civilization. Even grown-ups are not immune. It's not uncommon for an exasperated parent to ask, when faced with offspring who have just tried to pull off one of the spectacularly dangerous bits of foolishness that are stock in trade of high-spirited younglings everywhere, so which were you supposed to be, Kenobi or Skywalker? Kenobi would rather talk than fight. But when there's fighting to be done, few can match him. Skywalker is the master of audacity. His intensity, boldness, and sheer jaw-dropping luck are the perfect complement to Kenobi's deliberate, balanced steadiness. Together, they are the Jedi hammer that has crushed the Separatist infestations on scores of worlds. All the younglings watching the battle on Coruscant's sky know it. When Anakin and Obi-Wan get there, those dirty Seppers are gonna wish they'd stayed in bed today. The adults know better, of course. That's the part of what being a grown-up is. Understanding that heroes are created by the HoloNet, and that real-life Kenobi and Skywalker are human beings, after all. Even if they are really everything what the legends say they are, who's to say they'll show up in time? Who knows where they are right now? They might be trapped on some Separatist backwater. They might be captured, wounded, or even dead. Some of the adults whisper to themselves, they might have fallen. Because the stories are out there, not on the HoloNet, of course. The HoloNet news is under the control of the Office of the Supreme Chancellor, and not even Palpatine's renowned candor would allow tales like those to be told. But people hear whispers of names that Jedi whispers of names that the Jedi would like to pretend never existed. Sora Bolg, Depa Billaba. Jedi who have fallen to the dark, who have joined the Separatist, or worse, who have massacred civilians, or even murdered their comrades. The adults have a sickening suspicion that the Jedi cannot be trusted. Not anymore. That even the greatest of them can suddenly just snap. The adults know that legendary heroes are merely legends, and not heroes at all. These adults can take no comfort from their younglings. Palpatine is captured, Grievous will escape, the Republic will fall. No mere human beings can turn the tide. No mere human beings would even try, not even Kenobi and Skywalker. And so, it is that these adults across the galaxy watch the HoloNet with ashes in their hearts, with ashes where their hearts should be. Ashes because they can't see two prismatic bursts of real space reversion far out beyond the planet's gravity well. Because they can't see a pair of starfighters crisply jettison hyperdrive rings and streak into the storm of separatist vulture fighters with all guns blazing. A pair of starfighters, Jedi starfighters. Only two. 2 is enough. 2 is enough because the adults are wrong and their younglings are right. Though this is the end of the age of heroes, it has saved the best for last. Excuse me, I need to take a drink of my beverage. Greetings to all of you who have just joined in, Sukoi Gar. I've just finished reading the introduction, and we are now going to get to the meat and potatoes, if you will, of Star Wars Revenge of the Sith by Matthew Stover. So here we go. In Part 1, Victory. The dark is generous. Its first gift is concealment. Our true faces lie in the dark beneath our skins. Our true hearts remain shadowed, deeper still. But the greatest concealment lies not in protecting our secret truths, but in hiding from us the truth of others. The dark protects us from what we dare not know. Its second gift is comforting illusion, the ease of gentle dreams in the night's embrace, the beauty that imagination brings to what would repel in a day's harsh light. But the greatest of its comfort is the illusion that the dark is temporary, that every night brings a new day, because it is day that is temporary. Day is the illusion. Its third gift is the light itself. As days are defined by their nights that divide them, as stars are defined by the infinite black through which they wheel, the dark embraces the light, and brings forth from the center of its own self. With each victory of the light, it is the dark that wins. Anti-fighter flak flashed on all sides. Even louder than the clatter of shrapnel and the snarl of his sublight drives, his cockpit hummed and rang with near hits from turbolaser fire from the capital ships crowding the space around him. Sometimes his whirling, spinning dive through the cloud of battle-skimmed bursts so closely that the energy scatter would slam his starfighter hard enough to hit his head off the supports in his pilot chair. Right now, Obi-Wan Kenobi envied the clones. At least they had helmets. "Ah-4," he said on the internal comm. "Can't you do something with the inertials?" The droid ganged into a socket on the starfighter's left wing, whistled some... The droid ganged into the socket on... The droid ganged into the socket on his starfighter's left wing, whistled something that sounded suspiciously like a human apology. Obi-Wan's frown deepened. R4P-17 had been spending too much time with Anakin's eccentric astromech. It's picking up R2-D2's bad habits. New bursts of flak I need to take another beverage. New bursts of flak bracketed his path. He reached into the Force, feeling for a safe channel through the swarms of shrapnel and sizzling nets of particle beams. There wasn't one. He locked a snarl behind his teeth, twisting his starfighter around another explosion that could have peeled its armor like an overripe Ithorian starfruit. He hates this part. He hated it. Flying's for droids. The cockpit speakers crackled. "There isn't a droid made that can outfly you, Master." He could still be surprised by the new depth of that voice, the calm confidence, the maturity. It seemed only last week Anakin had been a 10-year-old who wouldn't stop pestering him about Form 1 lightsaber combat. Sorry, he muttered, kicking into a dive that slipped a turbo laser burst no... He muttered, kicking into a dive that slipped past a turbo laser burst by no more than a meter. Was that out loud? Wouldn't matter if it wasn't. I know what you're thinking. Do you? He looked through the cockpit canopy to find his one-time Padawan flying inverted, mirroring him so closely that, but for the transparent steel between them, they might have shaken hands. Obi-Wan smiled up at him. Some new gift of the Force? Not the Force, Master. Experience. That's what you're always thinking. Obi-Wan kept hoping to hear some of Anakin's old, cocky grin in his tone, but he never did. Not since Jabim. Perhaps not since Geonosis. The war had burned it out of him. Obi-Wan still tired, now and again. Obi-Wan still tried now and again to spark a real smile in his former Padawan, and Anakin still tried to answer. They both tried to pretend the war hadn't changed them. Ah, Obi-Wan took his hand from his starfighter's control yoke to direct an upside-down friend's attention forward. Dead ahead, a blue-white point of light splintered into 4 lasers, straight trails of ion drives. And what does your experience tell you we should do about those incoming TIE-fighters? That we should break it, right? Wait, that we should break, right. Obi-Wan was already making that exact move, as Anakin had spoke. But where they inverted to each other, breaking right, shot him once, while Anakin whipped out from the other. The TIE-fighters' cannons rippled space between them, tracking faster than their starfighters could slip. His onboard threat display chimed a warning. 2 of the droids had remote sensor locks on him. Another must have lit up his partner. Anakin, slip jaws! My thoughts exactly. They blew past the TIE-fighters, looping in evasive spirals. The droid ships wrenched themselves into pursuit maneuvers that would have killed any living pilot. The slip-jaw maneuver was named for the scissor-like mandibles of the Kashyyyk/spider. Droids closing rapidly on their tails, cannon fire stitching space on all sides, the 2 Jedi pulled their ships through the mirrored rolls that sent them streaking head-on for each other from opposite ends of the vast Republic cruiser. For merely human pilots, this would be suicide. By the time you could see your partner's starfighter streaking towards you at a respectable fraction of light speed, it's already too late for your merely human reflexes to react. But these particular pilots were far from merely human. The Force nudged hands-on control yokes, and the Jedi starfighters twisted and flashed out of past each other belly to belly, close enough to scorch each other's paint. TIE-fighters were the Trade Federation's latest space superiority droid, but even the electronic reflexes of the starfighter's droid brain were too slow for this one. One of his pursuers met one of Anakin's head-on. Both vanished in a blossom of flame. The shock wave of debris and expanding gas rocketed Obi-Wan. He fought the control yoke, barely keeping his starfighter out of a tumble that would have scattered him across the cruiser's ventral hull. Before he could straighten out, his threat display chimed again. "Oh, marvelous," he muttered under his breath. Anakin's surviving pursuer had switched targets. "Why is it always me?" "Perfect." Through the cockpit speakers, Anakin's voice carilled in grim satisfaction. "Both of them are on your tail." "Perfect. It's not the word I would use." Obi-Wan twisted his yoke juking madly across the space. Juking madly as space around him flared to scarlet. "We have to split up." "Break left," Anakin sounded calm as a stone. The turbo laser tower off your port bow. Thread its guns. I'll take things from there. Easy for you to say. Obi-Wan whipped sideways along the cruiser's superstructure. Fire from the pursuing TIE-fighters blasted burning chunks from the cruiser's armor. Why am I always the bait? I am right behind you. R2, lock on. Obi-Wan stuck his Obi-Wan spun his starfighter between the reconciling turbo laser cannons, close enough that the energy scatter made his cockpit clang like a gong. But still cannon fire flashed past him from the tri-fighters behind. Anakin, they're all over me. Dead ahead, move right to clear my shot. Now! Obi-Wan flared his port jets, and the starfighter kicked into the right. One of the tri-fighters behind him decided it couldn't follow and went for the ventral slip that took it directly into the blast from Anakin's cannons. It vanished into a boil of superheated gas. Good shooting, R2! Anakin's dry chuckle from the cockpit speakers vanished behind a clang of lasers, blasting a blade of shielding off of Obi-Wan's left wing. I'm running out of tricks here. Clearing the vast Republic cruiser put him on course for the curving hull of one of the Trade Federation's battleships. Space between the two capital ships blazed with turbo-laser exchanges. Excuse me. Some of those flashing energy blasts were as big as around as his entire ship. The merest graze would blow him to atoms. Obi-Wan dived right in. He had the Force to guide him, though. He had the Force to guide him through, and the tri-fighter had only its electronic reflexes, but those electronic reflexes operated at roughly the speed of light. It stayed on his tail as if they were dragging it by a tow cable. Obi-Wan went left, and Anakin went right. The tri-fighter would swing halfway through the difference. The same with up and down. It was averaging his movements with Anakin's. Somehow, its droid brain could realize that as long as it stayed between the two Jedi, Anakin couldn't fire without hitting his partner. The tri-fighter was under no similar restraint. Obi-Wan flew through a storm of scarlet needles. No wonder we're losing the war, he muttered. They're getting smarter. What was that, Master? I didn't copy. Obi-Wan kicked his starfighter into a tight spiral towards the Federation cruiser. I'm taking the deck. Good idea. I need some room to maneuver. Cannon fire tracked closer. Obi-Wan's cockpit speakers buzzed. Cut right, Obi-Wan. Hard right. Don't let him get a handle on you. R2, lock on. Obi-Wan's starfighter streaked along the curve of the Separatist cruiser's dorsal hull. Anti-fighter flak on all sides of the cruiser's guns tried to pick at him. He rolled a right wing over into the service trench that stretched alongside the cruiser's hull. This low and close to the deck, the cruiser's anti-fighter guns could not depress their angle of fire enough to get a shot. But the tri-fighter stayed right on his tail. At the far end of the service trench, the massive support buttresses of the cruiser's towering bridge left no room for even Obi-Wan's small craft. He kicked his starfighter into a half roll and whipped him out of the trench, and shot him straight up in the tower's angled leading edge. One burst of his underjets jerked him past the forward viewports of the bridge, with only meters to spare, and of course the tri-fighters followed his path exactly. Of course, he muttered. That would have been too easy. Anakin, where are you? One of the control surfaces on his left wing shattered in a burst of plasma. It felt as if he was being shot in the arm. He toggled switches, fighting for the yoke. R4P-17 shrilled at him. Obi-Wan keyed in eternal calm. Don't try to fix it, R4. I've shut it down. I have a lock, Anakin said. Go! Firing now! Obi-Wan hit a maximum drag on his wing, and his starfighter shot into a barely controlled arc, high and right as Anakin's cannons vaporized the last tri-fighter. Obi-Wan fired retros to stall his starfighter, in the blind spot behind the Separatist cruiser's bridge. He hung there for a few seconds to get his breathing and heart under control. Thanks, Anakin. Thanks. That's all. Don't thank me, it was R2 shooting. Yes, I suppose if you like you can thank your droid for me as well. And Anakin? Yes, Master? Next time, you're the bait. This is Obi-Wan Kenobi, a phenomenal pilot who doesn't like to fly, a devastating warrior who'd rather not fight, a negotiator without peer who frankly prefers to sit alone in a quiet cave and meditate. Jedi Master, General in the Grand Army of the Republic, member of the Jedi Council, and yet, inside, he feels like he's none of these things. Inside, he still feels like a Padawan. It is a truism of the Jedi Order that Jedi Knight's education truly begins only when he becomes a master. That everything important to him about being a master is learned from one student. Obi-Wan feels the truth of this every single day. He sometimes dreams of when he was a Padawan. In fact, as well as feeling, he dreams of his own master, Qui-Gon Jinn, that did not die in the plasma fuel generator core of Theed. He dreams that his master's wise guiding hand is still with him. But Qui-Gon's death is an old pain, one with which he long ago came to terms. A Jedi does not cling to the past. And Obi-Wan Kenobi knows it too. And Obi-Wan Kenobi knows, too, that to have lived his life without being a master to Anakin Skywalker would have left him a different man, a lesser man. Anakin has taught him so much. Obi-Wan sees much of Qui-Gon in Anakin that sometimes it hurts his heart. At the very least, Anakin mirrors Qui-Gon's flair for the dramatic, his casual disregard for the rules. Training Anakin and fighting beside him all these years has unlocked something inside Obi-Wan. It's as though Anakin has rubbed off on him a bit. It has loosened the clenched jaw clenched jaw insistence on absolute correctness that Qui-Gon always said was his greatest flaw. Obi-Wan Kenobi has learned to relax. He smiles now, and sometimes even jokes, and has become known for the gentle wisdom humor can provide. Though he does not know it, his relationship with Anakin has molded him into a great Jedi Qui-Gon always said he might be. It is a characteristic of Obi-Wan that he is entirely unaware of this. Being named to the council came as a complete surprise. Even now, he is sometimes astonished by the faith that the Jedi Council has in his abilities, and that the credit they give to his wisdom and greatness was never his ambition. He wants only to perform whatever task is given to him to the best of his ability. He is respected throughout the Jedi Order, his insight as well as warrior skill. He has become the hero of the next generation of Padawans. He is the Jedi their masters hold up as a model. He is the being that the Council assigns to their most important missions. He is modest, centered, and always kind. He is the ultimate Jedi. He is proud to be Anakin Skywalker's best friend. R2, where's that signal? From the socket beside the cockpit, R2-D2 whistled and beeped. A translation spired across Anakin's console readout. Scanning, lots of ECM signal jamming. Keep on it, he glanced at Obi-Wan's starfighter limping through the battle, 100 meters off his left wing. I can feel his jitters all the way from over here. A tootle. A Jedi is always calm. He won't think it's funny, neither do I. Less joking, more scanning. Anakin Skywalker's starfighter battles were usually as close to fun as he ever came. This one wasn't. Not because of the overwhelming odds or the danger he himself was in. He didn't care about odds, and he didn't think of himself as being in any particular danger. A few wings of droid fighters didn't much scare a man who's been a pod racer since he was 6, and had won the Bunta Cup at 9, who was, in fact, the only human to ever finish a pod race, let alone win one. In those days, he had used the Force without knowing it. He thought that the Force was something inside him, just a feeling of instinct. A string of lucky guesses that led him through maneuvers other pilots wouldn't dare attempt. Now, though. Now he could reach into the Force and feel the engagement throughout Coruscant space, as though the whole battle were happening inside his head. His vehicle became his body. The pulses of its engines were the beat of his own heart. Flying, he could forget about his slavery, about his mother, about Geonosis and Jabim, Argonar and Munilinst, and all the catastrophes of this brutal war, about everything that had been done to him, and everything he had done. He could even put aside, for as long as the battle roared around him, the starfire of his love for the woman who waited for him on the world below, the woman whose breath was his only air, whose heartbeat was his only music, whose face was the only beauty his eyes would ever see. He could put all of this aside because he was a Jedi, because it was time to do a Jedi's work. But today was different. Today wasn't about dodging lasers and blasting droids. Today was about the man. Excuse me. Today was about the life of the man who might as well have been his father, a man who could die if the Jedi didn't reach him in time. Excuse me. Anakin had been late once before. Obi-Wan's voice came over the cockpit speakers, flat and tight. Does your droid have anything? R4 is hopeless. I think that last cannon hit Cook. Excuse me. Does your droid have anything? R4 is hopeless. I think that last cannon hit cooked his motivator. Anakin could see exactly the look on his former master's face, a mask of calm belied by a jaw so tight that when he spoke his mouth barely moved. Don't worry, Master, Don't worry, Master. If his beacon's working, R2 will find it. Have you thought about how we'll find the Chancellor if... No, Obi-Wan sounded absolutely certain. There's no need to consider it. Until the possible becomes actual, it is only a distraction. Be mindful of what is, not what might be. Excuse me, I have to take a drink. Anakin had to stop himself from reminding Obi-Wan that he wasn't a Padawan anymore. I should have been there, he said through his teeth. I told you I should have been there. Anakin, he was defended by Stas Ali and Shaak Ti. If two masters couldn't prevent this, how do you think you could? Stas Ali is clever and valiant, and Shaak Ti is one of the most cunning Jedi I've ever met. She's even taught me a few tricks. Anakin assumed that he was supposed to be impressed. But General Grievous. Master T had faced him before, Anakin. After Munilist, she is not only... Master T had faced him before, Anakin. After Munilist. She is not only subtle and experienced, but very capable indeed. Seats on the Jedi Council aren't handed out as party favors. I've noticed. He let it drop. The middle of a space battle was no place to get into this particular sore subject. If only he'd been there, instead of Shaak Ti and Stas Ali, council members or not. If he had been there, Chancellor Palpatine would be home and safe already. Instead, Anakin had been stuck running around the Outer Rim for months, like some useless Padawan, and all Palpatine had for protectors were Jedi who were clever and subtle. Clever and subtle. He could whip any 10 clever and subtle Jedi with his lightsaber tied behind his back. But he knew better than to say so. Put yourself in the moment, Anakin. Focus. Copy that, Master, Anakin said dryly. Focusing now. R2-D2 twittered, and Anakin checked his console readout. We've got him, Master. The hull is... the cruiser is dead ahead. That's Grievous's flagship, Invisible Hand. Anakin, there are dozens of cruisers dead ahead. It's the one crawling with vulture fighters. The vulture fighters clinging alongside the curves of the Trade Federation cruiser, indicated by Palpatine's beacon, gave it an eerily lifelike ripples, like some metallic marine predator bristling with Alderaanian walking barnacles. Oh, that one. You could have practically hear Obi-Wan's stomach dropping. Oh, this should be easy. Now some of them stripped themselves from the cruiser. Igniting their drives, they came looping towards the two Jedi. Easy? No, but it might be fun. Sometimes a little teasing was the only way to get Obi-Wan to loosen up. Lunch at Dex's says I'll blast 2 for each of yours. R2 can keep score. Anakin. All right, dinner. And I promise that this time I won't let R2 cheat. No games, Anakin. There's too much at stake. There. That was the tone Anakin had been looking for. Slightly scolding, schoolmasterish edge. Obi-Wan was back in form. Have your droid tight beam a report to the temple, and send out a call for any Jedi and starfighters. We'll come at him from all sides. Way ahead of you, Master. But when he checked his comm reading, he shook his head. There's still too much ECM. R2-D2 can't raise the temple. I think the only reason we can even talk to each other is because we're practically side by side. And the Jedi beacons? No joy, Master. Anakin's stomach clenched, but when he fought the tension out of his voice, "We may be the only two Jedi out here." "Then we will have to be enough. Switching to clone fighter channel." Anakin spun his dial to the new frequency in time to hear Obi-Wan say, "Oddball, do you copy? We need help." The clone captain's helmet speaker flattened into the The clone captain's helmet speaker flattened the humanity out of his voice. "Copy that, Red Leader. Mark my position and form your squad behind me. We're going in. On our way." The droid fighters had lost themselves against the background of the battle, but R2-D2 was tracking them on scan. Anakin shifted his grip on the starfighter's control yoke. 10 vultures inbound, high and left to my orientation. More on the way. I have them. Anakin, wait. The cruiser's base shields have dropped. I'm reading 4. No 6 ships incoming. Obi-Wan's voice rose. Tri-fighters, coming in fast. Anakin's smile tightened. This was about to get interesting. Tri-fighters first, Master. The vultures can wait. Agreed. Slip back and right. Agreed. Slip back and right. Swing in behind me, and we'll take them from the slant. Let Obi-Wan go first with a blown left control surface and half a crippled R unit with Palpatine's life at stake? Not likely. Negative, Anakin said. I'm going in head-to-head. I'll see you on the far side. Take it easy. Wait for Oddball and Squad 7. Anakin. He could hear the frustration in Obi-Wan's voice as he kicked his starfighter's sublights and surged past his former master. His former master still hadn't gotten used to being able to order Anakin around. His former master still hadn't gotten used to not being able to order Anakin around. Not that Anakin had never been much for following orders. Obi-Wan's or anyone else's. Sorry we're late. The digitalized voice of the clone whose call sign was Oddball sounded as calm as if he were ordering dinner. We're on your right, Red Leader. Where's Red 5? Anakin, form up. But Anakin was already streaking to meet the Trade Federation fighters. Incoming! Obi-Wan's familiar sigh clearly came over the comm, and Anakin knew exactly what the Jedi Master was thinking. The same thing he was always thinking. He still had much to learn. Excuse me, I need to take a drink. I'm going to take a quick break to answer this question from Imperial Shock Trooper. So this book is actually based on one of the first editions of George Lucas's script. By the time of final cut of Revenge of the Sith, you'll find that it's a little bit different from the book. So when Matthew Stover was set to write the novelization, George Lucas gave him one of the first editions of the script to adapt. He didn't have the up-to-date ones, because when you're making a film, you're constantly editing the script, and things are cut out of the movie. Let me just finish my drink here, because my voice is getting a little dry. Anakin's smile thinned to a grim straight line as enemy starfighters swarmed in around him, and he thought the same thing as he always thought. We'll see about that. He gave himself to the battle, and his starfighter world and his starfighters were. Excuse me. Let me try that again. He gave himself to the battle, and his starfighter whirled, and his cannons hammered, and droids on all sides began to burst into clouds of debris and superheated gas. This was how he relaxed. This is Anakin Skywalker, the most powerful Jedi of his generation, perhaps of any generation, the fastest, the strongest, an unbeatable pilot, an unstoppable warrior. On the ground, in the air, or sea, or space, there is no one even close. He is not just power, not just skill, but dash, that rare, invaluable combination of boldness and grace. He is the best there is at what he does, the best there has ever been, and he knows it. HoloNet features call him the hero with no fear, and why not? What should he be afraid of? Except, fear lives inside him anyways, chewing away the firewalls around his heart. Anakin sometimes thinks of the dread that eats at his heart as a dragon. Children on Tatooine tell each other of the dragons that live inside the suns. Smaller cousins of the sun dragons are supposed to live inside the fusion furnaces that power everything from starships to pod racers. But Anakin's fear is another kind of dragon. A cold kind. A dead kind. Not nearly dead enough. Not long after he became Obi-Wan's Padawan, all those years ago, a minor mission had brought him to the dead system. One so immensely old... Excuse me, I have to... probably shouldn't have chosen a carbonated beverage. I'm going to try that again. Not long after he became Obi-Wan's Padawan, all those years ago, a minor mission had brought them to a dead system. One so immeasurably old that its star had long ago turned into a frigid dwarf of the hyper-compacted wow, that's a big word. Frigid dwarf of hyper-compacted trace metals, hovering a quantum fraction of a degree above absolute zero. Anakin couldn't even remember what the mission might have been, but he'd never forgotten that dead star. It had scared him. Stars can die? It is the way of the universe. Which is another manner of saying that it is it is a way of the universe, which is another manner of saying that it is what the Force wills. Obi-Wan had told him, everything dies. In time, even stars burn out. This is why the Jedi form no attachments. All things pass. To hold on to something or someone beyond its time to set the selfish desires against the Force, that is a pathway to misery, Anakin. The Jedi do not walk it. That is the kind of fear that lives inside Anakin Skywalker, the dragon of that dead star. It is an ancient, cold, dead voice within his heart that whispers, all things die. In bright day, he can't hear it. In battle, a mission, even a report before the Jedi Council can make him forget it's even there. But at night, the walls as he has built sometimes start to frost over. Sometimes they start to crack. At night, the dead star dragon sometimes sneaks through his cracks and crawls up into his brain and chews at the inside of his skull. The dragon whispers of what Anakin has lost and what he will lose. The dragon reminds him every night of how he held his dying mother in his arms, of how he had spent her last strength to say, I knew you would come for me, Anakin. The dragon reminds him every night that someday he will lose Obi-Wan, he will lose Padme, or they will lose him. All things die, Anakin Skywalker. Even stars burn out. And the only answers he has ever had for these dead, cold whispers are his memories of Obi-Wan's voice or Yoda's, but sometimes he can't quite remember them. All things die. He can barely even think about it. But right now, he doesn't have a choice. The man he flies to rescue is a closer friend than he had ever hoped to have. That's what puts the edge in his voice when he tries to make a joke. That's what flattens his mouth and tightens his burn scar on his right cheek. The Supreme Chancellor has always been friendly to Anakin. Always. Always there, always caring, always free with advice and unstinting aid. A sympathetic ear and kindly, loving, unconditional acceptance of Anakin is exactly as he is, the sort of acceptance Anakin could never get from another Jedi, not even from Obi-Wan. He can tell Palpatine's things he could never share with his master. He can tell Palpatine things he can't even tell Padme. Now, the Supreme Chancellor is in the worst kind of danger. And Anakin is on his way, despite the dread boiling in his blood. Despite the dread boiling through his blood. That's what makes him a real hero. Not the way the HoloNet labels him, not without fear, but stronger than fear. He looks at the dragon in the eye and doesn't even slow down. If anyone can save Palpatine, Anakin will. Because he's already the best. He's still getting better. But locked away behind the walls of his heart, the dragon that is his fear coils and squirms and hisses. Because his real fear, in a universe when even stars can die, is that being the best will never be good enough. Ugh. If you must know, Grant Scarborough, The beverage I'm drinking is a sparkling water from Canada Dry. If Canada Dry wants to sponsor me, that's great, but I won't hold my breath. Alright. Obi-Wan's starfighter jolted sideways. Anakin whipped by him and used his forward attitude jets to kick himself into a skew flip, facing backwards to blast the last of the tri-fighters on his tail. Now, there were only vulture fighters left, a lot of vulture droids. Did you like that one, Master? Very pretty. Obi-Wan's cannons stitched plasma across the hull of a swooping vulture fighter until the droid exploded. But we're not through yet. Watch this! Anakin flipped his starfighter again and dived, spinning, directly through the flock of vulture droids. Their drives blazed as they came around. He led them streaking for the upper deck of a laser-scarred separatist cruiser. I'm going to lead them through the needle. Don't lead them anywhere. Obi-Wan's threat display had tallied vultures on Anakin's tail. 12 of them. 12! First Jedi principle of combat. Survive. No choice. Anakin slipped his starfighter through the storm of cannon fire. Come down and thin them out a little bit. Obi-Wan slammed his control yoke forward, though jamming it against its impact rest would push his battered starfighter faster in pursuit. Nothing fancy, for. As though the damaged droid were even capable of anything fancy. Just hold me steady. He reached into the Force and felt for his shot. On my mark, break left, now! The shutdown control surface of his left wing turned to break right, into a tight overhead spiral that traversed Obi-Wan's guns across the paths of 4 vultures. Flash, 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 flash. And all 4 were gone. He flew through the clouds of glowing plasma, and couldn't waste time going around. Anakin still had 8 of them on his tail. And what was this? Obi-Wan frowned. The cruiser looked familiar. The needle, he thought. Oh, please, say you're kidding. Anakin's starfighter skimmed only meters above the cruiser's dorsal hull. Cannon missiles from the vulture fighters swooping toward him, blasted chunks out of the cruiser's armor. Okay, R2, where's that trench? His forward screen lit with a topograph of the cruiser's hull. Just ahead of the trench that Obi-Wan had led the tri-fighters into, Anakin flipped his starfighter through a razor-sharp wing-over down past the rim. The walls of the service trench flashed... excuse me. The walls of the service trench flashed past him as he streaked for the bridge tower at the far end. From here, he could see even the minuscule slit between the support struts. With 8 vultures in pursuit, he'd never pull off a slant up the tower's leaning edge as Obi-Wan had. But that was all right. He wasn't planning to. His cockpit comm buzzed. Don't try it, Anakin. It's too tight. Too tight for you, maybe. I'll get through. R2-D2 whistled nervous agreement with Obi-Wan. Easy, R2, Anakin said. We've done this before. Cannon fire blazed past him, impacting the support struts ahead. Too late to charge his mind now, he was committed. Too late to change his mind now, he was committed. He would bring his ship through, or he would die. Right now, strangely, he didn't actually care which. Use the Force, Obi-Wan sounded worried. Think yourself through, and the ship will follow. What do you expect me to do? Close my eyes and whistle? Anakin muttered under his breath, and then said out loud, Copy that. Thinking now. R2-D2's squeal was as close to terrified as a droid can sound. Glowing letters spidered across Anakin's readout. Abort! 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 Anakin smiled. Wrong thought. Obi-Wan could only stare open-mouthed as Anakin's starfighter snapped into its side and scraped through the slit, with centimeters to spare. He fully expected one of the struts to knock R2-D2's dome off. The vulture droids tried to follow, but they were just a hair too big. When the first 2 impacted, Obi-Wan triggered his cannons on a downward sweep. The evasion maneuvers pre-programmed into the vulture droid fighter's brain sent them into a diving away from Obi-Wan's lasers, straight into a fireball expanding from the front of the struts. Obi-Wan looked up to find Anakin soaring straight out of the cruiser with a quick snap roll of victory. Obi-Wan matched his course, without the flourish. I'll give you the first 4. Oh, wait, no. I'll give you the first 4, Anakin said over the comm. But the other 8 are mine. Anakin. Alright, we'll split them. As they left the cruiser behind, their sensors showed Squad 7 dead ahead. The clone pilots were fully engaged, looping through a dogfight so tight that their ion trails looked like glowing balls of string. Oddball's in trouble. Oddball's in trouble. I'm going in to help him out. Don't. He's doing his job. We need to do ours. Master, they're getting eaten alive over there. Every one of them would gladly trade his life for Palpatine's. Will you trade Palpatine's for theirs? No, of course not. But, Anakin, I can understand you want to save everyone. You always do, but you can't. Anakin's voice went tight. Don't remind me. Head for the command ship. Without waiting for a reply, Obi-Wan targeted the command cruiser and shot it away at a maximum thrust. Excuse me, I'm gonna get a drink. The cross of burned scar beside Anakin's eye went pale as he turned his starfighter in pursuit. Obi-Wan was right. He almost always was. You can't save everyone. His mother's body broken and bloody in his arms, her battered eyes struggling to open, the touch of her smashed lips. I knew you would come. I missed you so much. That's what it was to be not quite good enough. That's what it was to be not quite good enough. It could happen any time, any place. If he was a few minutes late, if he let his attention drift a single second, he was a whiskey or two weak. Any place, any time, but not here, not now. He forced his mother's face down below the surface of his consciousness. Time to get to work. They flashed through the battle, dodging flak and turbolaser bolts, slipping around the cruisers to eclipse themselves from the sensors of the droid fighters. They were only a few dozen kilometers from the command cruiser when a pair of droid fighters whipped across their path, firing up in their direction. Anakin's sensor board lit up with R2-D2's shrilling a warning. Missiles! He wasn't worried for himself. The two on his tail were coming at him in a perfect tandem. Missiles lacked sophisticated brains of droid fighters. To keep them from colliding on their inbound vectors, one of them would have to lock onto his fighter's left drive, the other onto his right. A quick snap roll would make those two vectors intersect, which they did, in a silent blossom of flame. Obi-Wan wasn't so lucky. A pair of missiles locked onto his sublights weren't precisely side by side. A snap roll would be worse than useless. Instead, he fired his retros and kicked his dorsal jets to a half his velocity, and knocked him a few meters planetward. The lead missile overshot and spiraled off into the orbital battle. The trailing missile came close enough to trigger its proximity sensors and detonated a spray of glowing shrapnel. Obi-Wan's starfighter flew through the debris, and the shrapnel tracked him. Little silver spheres flipped themselves into his path and latched into the starfighter's skin, then split, sprouting spidery arrays of jointed arms that pried up hull plates, exposing the starfighter's internal works to multiple circular whirls of blade like ancient mechanical bone saws. This was a problem. I'm hit. Obi-Wan sounded more irritated than concerned. I'm hit. I have a visual. Anakin swung his starfighter closer to pursuit. Buzz droids. I count 5. Get out of here, Anakin. There's nothing you can do. I'm not leaving you, Master. The cascades of sparks founted into space from the buzz droid saws. Anakin, the mission! Get to the command ship! Get to the Chancellor! Not without you, Anakin said through his teeth. One of the buzz droids crouched beside the cockpit. Silvery arms grappling with R4. Another one worked the starfighter's nose, while a third skittered toward the ventral hydraulics. The last two of the aggressive little mechs had spidered onto Obi-Wan's left wing, working on that damaged control surface. You can't help me, Obi-Wan said, maintaining his Jedi calm. They're shutting down all the controls. I can fix that. Anakin brought his starfighter into line with only a couple meters off of Obi-Wan's wing. Steady, he muttered. Steady, and triggered a single burst of his right side cannon that blasted two of the buzz droids into gouts of molten metal, along with most of Obi-Wan's left wing. Anakin said, "Whoops." The starfighter bucked hard enough to knock Obi-Wan's skull against the transparent steel canopy. A gust of stinging smoke filled the cockpit. Obi-Wan fought the yoke to keep his starfighter out of an uncontrolled tumble. "Anakin, that's not helping!" "You're right. Bad idea. Here, let's try this. Move left and swing under." "Anakin, you're too close. Wait!" Obi-Wan stared in disbelief as Anakin's starfighter edged closer, and with a dip of its wings physically slammed a buzz droid into a smear of metal. The impact jolted Obi-Wan again, pounded a deep streak of dent into his starfighter's hull, and shattered the forward control surface of Anakin's wing. Anakin had forgotten the first principle of combat again, as usual. "You're going to get us both killed." His atmospheric scrubbers drained smoke from Obi-Wan's cockpit. Now the droid on the forward control surface of Obi-Wan's starfighter's right wing had peeled away enough of the hull plates that its jointed saw arms could get deep inside. Excuse me. Sparks flared into space, along with an expanding fountain of gas that instantly crystallized in hard vacuum. Velocity identical to Obi-Wan's, the shimmering gas hung on his starfighter's nose like a cloud of fog. "Blast," Obi-Wan muttered. "I can't see. My controls are going." "You're doing fine. Stay on my wing." Easier said than done. "I have to accelerate out of this." "I'm with you. Go." Obi-Wan eased the power to his thrusters, and his starfighter parted its cloud, but new vapor boiled out to replace as it went. Is that last one still on my nose? R4, can you do anything?" The only response that came from Anakin. "That's a negative on R4. Buzz droid got him." Obi-Wan corrected automatically. "Wait, they attacked R4? "Not just R4, one of them jumped over when we hit." "Blast," Obi-Wan thought. They are getting smarter. Alright, excuse me. I just have to answer a text real quick. Alright. Let me get back to this. Hold on, real quick. Alright. Through a gap torn in the cloud by a curve of his cockpit, Obi-Wan could see R2-D2 grappling with a buzz droid, hand to hand. Well, saw arm to saw arm. Even flying blindly and nearly out of control through the middle of a space battle, Obi-Wan could not avoid a second of disbelief at his bewildering variety of auxiliary tools and aftermarket behaviors Anakin had tinkered onto his own starfighter's astromech, even beyond the sophisticated upgrades performed by the Royal Engineers of Naboo. The little device was virtually a partner in its own right. R2's saw cut through one of the buzz droid's grapplers, sending the jointed arm flipping lazily off into space. Then it did the same to another. The panel opened in R2-D2's side, and a data jack arm stubbed out and smacked the tripled buzz droid right off of Anakin's hull. The buzz droid spun off until it was caught in the blast wash of Anakin's sublights, and then blew away faster than even Obi-Wan's eye could follow. Obi-Wan reflected that the Separatist droids weren't the only ones that were getting smarter. The data jack retracted, and a different panel opened, with this time in R2-D2's dome. A claw-like cable shot out into the cloud of gas that still billowed from Obi-Wan's right forward wing, and pulled back out a dragging, struggling buzz droid. The silver droid twisted and squirmed in its grapplers, and took hold of the cable. Climbing back alongside it, saw arms waving until Anakin popped the starfighter's underjets, and R2 cut the cable, and the buzz droid toppled away, tumbling helplessly through the battle. "You know," Obi-Wan said, "I begin to understand why you speak of R2 as though he's a living creature." "Do you?" He could hear Anakin smile. "Don't you mean it?" "Ah, yes." Don't you mean it? Ah, yes, he frowned. Yes, of course, it. Thank it for me, will you? Thank him yourself. Ah, yes. Thanks ought to. The whistle that came back over the comm had a clear flavor of "you're welcome." The last of the fog finally dissipated, and the sky ahead was full of ship. More than 1 kilometer from end to end, the vast command cruiser filled his visual field. At this range, all he could see were savannas of sand-colored hull, studded with turbo-laser mountains that lit up space with thunderbolts of disintegrating energy. Excuse me. Yes, press F to pay respects to R4. And that immense ship was getting bigger, fast. Anakin, we're going to collide. That's the plan. Head for the hangar. That's not... I know. First Jedi principle of... No, it's not going to work. Not for me. What? My controls are gone. I can't head for anything. Oh, well, alright, no problem. No problem? Then his starfighter clanged as if he had crashed into a ship-sized gong. Obi-Wan jerked and twisted his head around to find the other starfighter above his tail, literally just above Anakin's left dead control surface, was barely a hand span from Obi-Wan's sublight thrusters. Anakin had hit him on purpose, and then did it again. Clang! What are you doing? I'm just giving you... Anakin's voice came slow, tight with concentration. A little help with your steering. Obi-Wan shook his head. This was completely impossible. No other pilot would even attempt it. But for Anakin Skywalker, the completely impossible had an eerie way of being merely difficult. He reflected that he should be used to it by now. While these thoughts chased each other aimlessly through his mind, he had been staring bleakly at a blue shimmer of energy filling the yawing hangar bay ahead. Belatedly, he registered what he was looking at. He thought, oh, this is bad. Anakin, Obi-Wan began. He tried routing control paths to his yoke. No luck. Anakin drew up and tipped his forward surfaces down behind the sparking scrap that used to be R4. Anakin! Give me just a second, Master. Anakin's voice had gone even tighter. A muffled thump, then another, louder, and a scrape and a squeal of scraping metal. This isn't quite as easy as it looks. Anakin! What? The hangar bay! What about it? Have you noticed the shields are still up? Really? Really? Not to mention so close that Obi-Wan could practically taste it. Oh, sorry. I've been busy. Obi-Wan closed his eyes. Reaching into the Force, his mind followed the starfighter's mangled circuitry to locate and activate the sublight engines. The sublight engine's manual test board. With a slight push, he triggered a command normally used in bench tests. Full reverse. The contemporary tail of glowing debris shed by his disintegrating starfighter shot past him and evaporated into a cascade of miniature starbursts on contact with the hangar shield, which was exactly what was about to happen to him. The only effect of full reverse from his failing engines was to give him more time to see it coming. Anakin's starfighter swooped in front of him, crossing from left to right in a steep deflection. Energy flared from his cannons at the shield emitters at the right side of the hangar door, exploded into scrap. The blue shimmer of the bay shield flickered, faded, and vanished, just as Obi-Wan came spinning across the threshold and slammed along the deck, trailing sparks and a stream of tortured metal. His entire starfighter, what was left of it at any rate, vibrated with the roar of atmosphere howling from the unshielded bay. Massive blast doors ground together like jaws. Another force touch on the manual test board cut the power to his engines, but he couldn't trigger the explosive bolts on his cockpit canopy. And he had a bad feeling that those canopy bolts were the only thing on his craft that weren't about to explode. His lightsaber found his hand, and blue energy flared. One swipe from the canopy burst away and rippled into and rippled into space by the hurricane of escaping air. Obi-Wan flipped himself up into the stunningly cold gale and let it blow to the stunningly cold gale and let it blow him tumbling away as the remnants of his battered craft finally exploded. He rode the shock wave until he let the force right him in the air, landing cat-footed on the blackened streak. Still hot enough to scorch his boots, that his landing had gouged into the deck. The hangar was full of battle droids. His shoulders dropped and his knees bent, and his lightsaber came up to at an angle in front of his face. There were far too many for him to fight alone, but he didn't mind. At least he was out of that blasted starfighter. Excuse me, I need to take another drink. Anakin slipped his craft towards the hangar in a fountain of junk and flash-frozen gas. One last touch of the yoke twisted the starfighter through the closing teeth of the blast doors as Obi-Wan's canopy went the other way. Obi-Wan's ship was a hunk of glowing scrap, punctuating a long smoking skid mark. Obi-Wan himself, beard trimmed with frost, lightsaber out and flaming, stood in a tightened ring of battle droids. Anakin skewed his starfighter into a landing that scattered droids with a particle blast from his sublight thrusters. And for 1 second he was 9 years old again, behind the controls of a starfighter in the Theed-roiled hangar, his first touch of a real ship's real cannons blasting battle droids. He'd have done the same thing here, except that Palpatine was somewhere on the ship. They might need one of the light shuttles in this hangar to get the Chancellor safely to the surface. A few dozen cannon blasts bouncing around here could wreck them all. This he'd have to do by hand. One touch, he blew the canopy and sprang from the cockpit, flipping upwards to stand on its wing. Battle droids opened fire instantly. Anakin's lightsaber flashed. R2, locate the computer link. The little droid whistled at him, and Anakin allowed himself a tight smile. Sometimes he thought he could almost understand the droid's electrosonic code. Don't worry about us. Find Palpatine. Go on, I'll cover you. R2 popped out of its socket and bounced onto the deck. Anakin jumped ahead of it into the cascade of blaster fire and let the Force direct his blade. Battle droids began to spark and collapse. Get to the link. Anakin had to Get to that link, Anakin had to shout above the whine of blasters and the roar of exploding battle droids. I'm going for Obi-Wan. No need. Anakin whirled to find Obi-Wan right behind him, the act of slicing neatly through the brain case of a battle droid. I appreciate the thought, Anakin, the Jedi Master said with a gentle smile, but I've already come for you. This, then, is Obi-Wan and Anakin. They are closer friends, closer than brothers. Though Obi-Wan is 16 standard years Anakin's elder, they have become men together. Neither can imagine life without the other. The war has forged their two lives into one. Excuse me. The war that had done this was not the Clone Wars. Obi-Wan and Anakin's war began on Naboo, when Qui-Gon Jinn died at the hands of a Sith Lord. Master and Padawan and Jedi Knights together, they have fought this war for 13 years. Their war is their life. And their life is a weapon. Say what you will about the wisdom of ancient Master Yoda, or the deadly skill of grim-faced Mace Windu, or the courage of Ki-Adi-Mundi, or the subtle wills of Shakti. The greatness of all these Jedi is unquestioned, but it pales next to the legend that has grown around Kenobi and Skywalker. They stand alone. Together, they are unstoppable, unbeatable. They are the ultimate go-to guys of the Jedi Order. And when the good guys absolutely, positively have to win, the call goes out. Obi-Wan and Anakin always answer. Whether Obi-Wan's legendary cleverness might beat Anakin's raw powers... whether Obi-Wan's legendary cleverness might beat Anakin's raw power straight up, no rules, is the subject of schoolyard fistfights and crush pool wriggle matches. The pod chambers stink wars across the Republic. These struggles always end, somehow with the combatants on both sides admitting that it doesn't matter. Anakin and Obi-Wan would never fight each other. They couldn't. They're a team. They're the team. And both of them and both of them are sure that and both of them are sure they always will be. That is the end of chapter 1. Now, in the middle of that, I got a text from my girlfriend saying that she's on her way home from work. So I'm going to read a little bit of chapter 2, and then I'll find a good stopping point as I'm reading, and then unfortunately we'll have to end. But that doesn't mean I can't pick this up at a different time. So, without further ado, chapter 2, Dooku. The storm of blaster fire ricocheting through the hangar bay suddenly ceased. Clusters of battle droids withdrew behind ships and slipped into hatchways. Obi-Wan's familiar grimace showed past his blade as he let it shrink away. I hate it when they do that. Anakin's lightsaber had already been back on his belt. When they do what? Disengage and fall back for no reason. There's always a reason, Master. Obi-Wan nodded. That's why I hate it. Anakin looked at the litter of smoking droid parts scattered throughout the hangar bay, shrugged, and snugged his black glove. R2, where's the Chancellor? The little droid's data jack rotated in the wall socket. Its hollow projector eyes swiveled, and a blue scanning laser built a ghostly image near Anakin's boot. Palpatine shackled into a large swivel chair. Even in the tiny translucent blur, he looked exhausted and in pain, but alive. Anakin's heart thumped once, painfully against his ribs. He wasn't too late, not this time. He dropped to one knee, squinted at the image, and Palpatine looked as if he aged 10 years since Anakin had last seen him. Muscle bulged along the young Jedi's jaw. If Grievous had hurt the Chancellor, so much as even touched him, the hand of his jointed durasteel... Excuse me. The hand of jointed durasteel inside his black glove clenched. Excuse me again. So hard that the electronic feedback made his shoulder ache. Excuse me again. Obi-Wan spoke from over that shoulder. Do you have a location? Anakin rippled and twisted into a schematic. The image rippled and twisted into a schematic map of the cruiser. Far up on the top of the conning spire, R2 showed a pulsar of bright blue. In the general's quarters, Obi-Wan scowled. Any sign of Grievous himself? The pulsar shifted to the cruiser's bridge. And guards? Hollow images rippled again, transforming into an image of the cruiser's general quarters once more. Palpatine appeared to be alone. The chair sat in the center of an arc of canopy floor facing a huge curved viewing wall. Anakin muttered, That doesn't make any sense. Of course it does. It's a trap. Anakin barely heard him. He stared down his black gloved fist. He opened his fist, closed it, opened it again. The ache from his shoulder flowed down into the middle of his bicep. And it didn't stop. His elbow sizzled, and his wrist had been packed with red-hot gravel. His elbow sizzled, and his forearm, his elbow sizzled, and his forearm. His wrist had been packed with red-hot gravel, and his hand was on fire. But it wasn't his hand, or his wrist, or his forearm, or his elbow. It was a creation of jointed durasteel and electro drivers. Anakin? Anakin's lips drew back from his teeth. It hurts! What, your replacement arm? When did you have it equipped with pain sensors? I didn't. That's the point. The pain is in your mind, Anakin. No, Anakin's heart froze over. His voice went as cold as space. I can feel him. Him? Dooku. He's here. Here on the ship. Ah, Obi-Wan nodded. I'm sure he is. You knew? I guessed. Do you think Grievous couldn't have found Palpatine's beacon? It can hardly be an accident that through all the ECM, the Chancellor's homing signal was still in the clear. This is a trap, a Jedi trap. Obi-Wan laid his warm hand upon Anakin's shoulder, and his face was as grim as Anakin had ever seen. Possibly a trap set for us, personally. Anakin's jaw tightened. You're thinking of how he tried to recruit you on Geonosis before he sent you for execution? It's not possible that we will face that choice. It's not a choice, Anakin rose. Anakin rose. His Durasteel hand clenched and stayed that way, a centimeter from his lightsaber. Let him ask. My answer will be right here on my belt. Be mindful, Anakin. The Chancellor's safety is our only priority. Yes, of course. The ice in Anakin's chest thawed. All right, it's a trap. Next move? Obi-Wan allowed himself a smile of his allowed himself a bit of a smile of his own as he headed for the nearest exit of the hangar bay. Same as always, my young friend. We spring it. I can work with this plan, Anakin turned to his astromech. You stay here, R2. The little droid interrupted him with a wheeling whir. No arguments. Stay. I mean it. R2-D2 whistled a reply, a distinctly sulky tone. Listen, R2, someone has to maintain computer contact. Do you see a data jack anywhere on me? The little droid seemed to acquiesce, but not before weeping what sounded like it might have been a suggestion of where to look. Waiting by the open hatchway, Obi-Wan shook his head. Honestly, the way you talk to that thing. Anakin started towards him. Careful, Master. You'll hurt his feelings. He stopped in his tracks. A curious look on his face, as if he was trying to frown and to smile at the same time. Anakin? He didn't answer. He couldn't answer. He was looking at an image inside his head. Not an image, a reality. A memory of something that hadn't happened yet. He saw Count Dooku on his knees. He saw lightsabers crossed at the Count's throat. Clouds lifted from his heart. Clouds of Jabim, of Argonar, of Camino, of even the Tusken camp. For the first time in too many years he felt young as he really was. Young and free and full of light. Master! His voice seemed to be coming from someone else. Someone who hadn't seen what he's seen, hadn't done what he'd done. Master, right here, right now, you and I. Yes? He blinked. I think we're about to win the war. The vast semisphere of view wall bloomed into battle. Sophisticated sensor algorithms compressed the combat that sprawled throughout the galactic capital's orbit to a view that the naked eye could enjoy. Cruisers hundreds of kilometers apart, exchanging fires at near light speed, appeared to be practically hull to hull, joined by pulsing cables of flame. Turbo laser blasts became swift shafts of light that shuddered into prismatic splinters against shields, or bloomed into miniature supernovae that swallowed ships whole. The invisible gnat clouds of starfighter dogfights became gleaming dance of shadow moths at the end of Coruscant's brief spring. Within the immense curved computer-filtered carnage, the only furnishing was one lone chair, centered in the expanse of the empty floor. This was the General's chair, or just as the apartment atop the flagship's conning spire was called the General's quarters. With his back to the chair and to the man shackled within it, hands folded behind him, beneath his cloak of silken armor weave stood Count Dooku, stood Darth Tyrannus, Lord of the Sith. He looked upon his master's handiwork, and it was good. More than good. It was magnificent. Even the occasional tremor of the deck beneath his boots, as the entire ship shuddered under enemy torpedo and turbo laser blasts, felt to him like applause. Behind him sounded an intimidating hum of the intership holocom, crackled into a voice of both electronic and oddly expressive, as though a man spoke through a droid's electrosonic vocabulator. Lord Tyrannus, Kenobi and Skywalker have arrived. Yes, Count Dooku had felt them in the Force. Drive them towards me. My lord, I must express once more my objections. Dooku turned. From his commanding height, he stared down at the blue-scanned hollow image of Invisible Hand's commander. Your objections are noted. Your objections have already been noted, General. Leave the Jedi to me. But driving them to you also sends them towards the Chancellor himself. Why does he remain on the ship at all? He should be hidden. He should have been guarded. We should have him out of system out of hours ago. Matters are so, Count Dooku said, because Lord Sidious wishes them so. Should you desire to press your objections, please feel at liberty to take them up with him. I don't believe that will be necessary. Very well then. Confine your efforts to preventing support troops from boarding. Without their pet clones to back them up, no Jedi is a danger to me. The deck shuddered again, more sharply, followed by a sudden shift in vector of the cruiser's artificial gravity that would have sent a lesser man stumbling. With the force to maintain the dignified solidarity of his posture, the effect on Dooku was confined to the lift of one eyebrow. And may I suggest that you devote some attention to protecting this ship? Having it destroyed with both you and me aboard might put something of a cramp in the war effort, don't you think? It is already being done, my lord. Does my lord wish to observe the progress of the Jedi? I can feed the security monitors onto this channel. Thank you, General. That will be welcome. Gracious as ever, my lord. Grievous out. Count Dooku allowed himself a near-invisible smile. His violable courtesy, the hallmark of a true aristocrat, was effortless, yet somehow it seemed as always to impress the common rabble, as well as those with the intellect of common rabble, regardless of the accomplishment or station, like, for example, the repulsive cyborg Grievous. He sighed. Grievous had his uses. Not only was he an able field commander, but he would soon make a marvelous scapegoat to whom to hang every atrocity of this sadly necessary war. Someone had to take that particular fall, and Grievous was just such the creature for the job. It certainly would not be Dooku. This was, in fact, one purpose of the cataclysmic battle outside, but not the only one. The blue scanned image before him now became miniatures of Kenobi and Skywalker, as he's seen them so many times before, shoulder to shoulder, lightsabers whirling as they enthusiastically dismantled droid after droid, feeling as if they were winning, while in truth they were being chivied into exactly where the Lords of the Sith wanted them to go. Such as children they were. Dooku shook his head. It was almost too easy. This is Count Dooku, Darth Tyrannus, Count of Sereno. Once a great Jedi Master, now even a greater Lord of the Sith, Dooku is a dark colossus bestriding the galaxy, nemesis of the corrupt Republic, oriflamme of the principled Confederacy of Independent Systems. He is the very personification of shock and awe. He is one of the most respected and powerful Jedi in the Order's 25,000-year history. At the age of 70, Dooku's principles would no longer allow him to serve a republic in which political power was for sale to the highest bidder. He had said farewell to his former Padawan, Qui-Gon Jinn, now a legendary master in his own right. He had said farewell to his close friends on the Council, Mace Windu and the ancient Master Yoda. He had said farewell to the Jedi Order itself. He is numbered among the Lost 20, the Jedi who renounced their fealty to the Order and resigned their commissions of Jedi knighthood in service of ideals higher than even the Order itself professed. The Lost 20, as they became known since Dooku joined their number, are remembered with both honor and regret among the Jedi. Their images, sculpted from bronzium, stand enshrined in the temple's archives. These bronzium images serve as melancholy reminders that some Jedi have needs the Order cannot satisfy. Dooku had retired to his family estate on the planetary system of Sereno. Assuming his hereditary title as Count made him one of the wealthiest beings in the galaxy. Amid the unabashed corruption endemic to the Republic, his immense wealth could have bought the allegiance of any given number of senators. He could have, perhaps, even bought control of the Republic itself. But a man of such heritage, such principle, could never stop to be lord of a garbage heap, a chief of a horde of scavengers squabbling over the scraps of the Republic. To him was nothing more than this. Instead, he used all great power of his family fortune to vastly greater power of his unquestioned integrity to begin cleansing the galaxy from the fester of the so-called democracy. He is the icon of the separatist movement, its public face. He is to the Confederacy of Independent Systems what Palpatine is to the Republic, the living symbol of justice of its cause. This is the public story. This is the story that even Dooku, in his weaker moments, almost believes. Excuse me. In truth, it is more complicated. Dooku is different. So with that, I unfortunately think this might be a stopping point for the novel today. And then, if people liked what I did here and would like me to continue reading the novel at some point and stream it again, I'd be more than happy to do so. But for now, we've been streaming for about 94 minutes here, and I've gotten through most of Chapter 1. This is a very hefty book, for a novelization based off a film. It's very hefty. And what I enjoy about the book is it enhances the movie. It, rather than like some of the other novelizations that kind of explain some of the stuff that are that's in the movie that people didn't really get. This gives explanations as to why certain things. If when we get into it later, why Anakin wanted to be a Jedi Master so bad. It explains things in a way that the movie failed to do, and it makes the movie that much better when oh, well, he's really butthurt about not being a master because he wants to go through the Jedi archives. That way he could try to find a way to save Padme, But, it's probably one of the greatest novelizations of the Star Wars. I've only read the 6 novelizations, but in my opinion, it's one of my favorite novelizations. Yes, that is Mirza 1898. Yeah, it is pretty long. But yeah, so I think that's it for today with the Revenge of the Sith novelization. I'll hang out for a little bit to answer anyone's questions, but I need to be going soon. I hope you all enjoyed this, and if you thought it was great and you want more, let me know. If you thought it sucks and you want me to never do it again, let me know. And yeah, so I hope everybody had a good time and enjoyed my fumbling through this book and enjoyed my probably bad impressions of some of the characters. But it is what it is. I had fun reading for you guys, and I hope you guys had fun listening. So, yeah. So if anyone has any questions in the chat, you're welcome to ask, and I'll answer them. I'll actually go through and see if there were any questions, because I wasn't reading the chat while I was reading, because that would have messed me up. Part of me wishes that we got a pilot-based novel during the Clone Wars multimedia project. That would have been cool. One thing we didn't see in the Clone Wars multimedia project a lot is the clone-based pilots. And from reading the source books, a lot of the pilots in the Republic Navy weren't even actually clones. A lot of them were humans that were drafted. So, it was pretty cool. Hold on, I'm getting a text. Okay. By the way, for any... Oh, that's somebody not talking to me. I remember when my brother borrowed this book from the library before ROTS came out. I didn't read it at the time. I was around 6 or 7. So, funny story. My father did not actually let me watch Revenge of the Sith when it came out, because it was rated PG-13, and I was only like 10 or 11 at the time. He would not let me watch the film. So my mom felt bad for me, and she got me the novelization. So I actually read the novelization before I read the book, before I watched the film. So I had a unique perspective that a lot of people didn't get. I missed out on seeing one of the last Star Wars movies, maybe the last true Star Wars movie with my friends, and seeing it in theaters. But it's I'm not gonna resent my father from depriving me of that opportunity, but I was a little butthurt about that. Um, Legends General Grievous is a genocidal maniac. Yes, and that's why I love him. I actually read most of the Battle of Coruscant section of the novel. Not sure why it kept me from continuing. The novelization is really amazing. It is lengthy and wordy, though, so that's probably what, you know, just even reading through it now, it's just like, oh, my mouth is so dry and my throat's getting raw. So that's another reason why I'm stopping here. Not that my girlfriend's going to be here in like 2 minutes, but also because I'm physically exhausted. um, I wish they'd recanonize the book. I wish they'd recanonize a lot of things. I wish they would just recanonize Legends and make it a second timeline. Um, okay, so now that I caught up with the former ones, former questions, I'll answer what ones have been going on. Um, Thanks for this. It really helped me get through my rough draft. Oh, are you writing something? That would be cool. I, if you want to share with the group of what you're writing, I'm sure we'd all be happy to, you know, provide notes or whatever. And I enjoy reading some people's fan fiction. I'm not a big fan fiction guy, but I have read works of fan fiction that are so good that it's like, wow, this could fit within, the Star Wars canon. Well, canon to Legends. I don't follow the new canon. You know what I mean. Um, it was great. Some words are hard to pronounce, but I think it's because of the author. The Obi-Wan voice is really nice. Well, thank you. Have you considered making a Discord server? I have. For a while, I haven't been using Discord that much, but recently, I've got a bunch of new gaming computer equipment, and I've been gaming a lot more, and I've been using Discord a lot more, so that is possibly something that's going to be coming up in the future. Um, Radical Momo asks, yeah, what's a Mandalorian? Well, Radical Momo, go to my channel. I have several videos on Mandalorians, and give those a watch, and then you'll know what a Mandalorian is. And I appreciate if you liked the video to give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already subscribed, if you could subscribe, that'd be great too. If you like what you see, I'm not gonna force people who don't like what I do to subscribe, obviously. Vandre7224, thanks for reading. Glad to see people still remember the novelization and appreciate it. You're welcome. Like I said, this is one of my, I read the books before I read the book before I got to see the movie, so. Next time, get a second person so he can use the Star Wars soundboard with lasers and stuff. That would be cool. I didn't actually think about that. I actually have a voice morph software too that I was thinking about using for this, but by the time I actually got on here and got the stream all set up, we were already like 16 minutes late, so I decided not to tarry, and I just kind of went straight into it. Who would win, the CIS or the Fel Empire? Like CIS at its full strength? With like Grievous and everyone, maybe. Fel Empire. Well, the Fel Empire does have the Imperial Knights. That's actually good. That's a good mashup. I never really thought about that. Um, I would say the Fel. Well, no, the Dooku has his dark acolytes that could clash with the Imperial Knights. Ah, that might actually be an even fight. Well, so the CIS technology though is a lot older. The weapons aren't as powerful. The Fel Empire technology is a lot newer, and weapons are more powerful and more enhanced computer systems. I'd have to give it to the Fel Empire just because they're more modern. But if the CIS were to somehow upgrade themselves, I think it would be a fair fight. Um, Kevin Riddle, talk about your take on Palpatine creating Anakin. It was in my car's origin. Talk about talk about your take on Palpatine creating Anakin. It was in Lucas's original script. Um, so in the novel, um, Darth Plagueis, it's implied that the Force created Anakin as a kind of answer to Darth Plagueis resurrecting one of his older apprentices because he was trying to cheat death. So the Anakin was, you know, the Force's answer to, Darth Plagueis and the dark side getting super powerful. It was the Force trying to balance itself out. Uh, Whether George actually said, because I remember vaguely reading an article that George or somebody was saying that Palpatine created Anakin. I don't know anything about that because I didn't read the article. I haven't done any research into it, so I don't really have a take on it. If that's indeed what he implied, good for him, I guess. But I like the Legends explanation. I was 7 when Episode 3 was released. I only saw the toys and discovered Star Wars years later. Ah, well, at least you got into it. That stinks that you didn't get into it like when, the saga was at its peak, but um Clone Commando 9. Yes, I'm writing a sci-fi story the same vein as Star Wars. Oh, that's very interesting. I'll be sure to keep us interested. Be sure to keep us updated and send a link to your fan fiction whenever, and I'll give it a read. Well, not your fan fiction, your sci-fi story, and I'll give it a read. Still sad that they removed Captain Fordo from canon. He was too OP apparently. Um, Whatever. That just means they can't ruin him in the Disney canon. So I like Fordo in Legends. Um, Hacks are awesome. Possible Discord. Yep. Alpha 17. ROTS novel is my favorite Star Wars novel. Well, good. I hope you enjoyed me reading this. CIS would win by spamming robots. Well, as we see in the movies, B1 battle droids are easily overpowered, but, I think a Fel Imperial Stormtrooper might not be as, being not a cloned soldier, might not be as good as the clones were at killing battle droids, but I don't know if they have the right training and right equipment. I think they'd be fine. What if Severance Tan survived long enough to work alongside Grievous? She'd probably be better than Ventress because she failed a lot. Severance Tan made a lot of gains earlier in the war, so. Um, Ever watch anime? I've watched um, Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh growing up, and then I watched Attack on Titan, but I was never a huge fan of anime. Um, I too am making a sci-fi book that takes place 200 years in the future where a terrorist organization has conquered the planet via a war that lasts 113 years. That's interesting. I'd read that too. But alright, guys, it's around that time. I need to be going. Thank you all for watching. And I hope you all enjoyed it. Like I said, if everyone likes this and wants me to do more, I will do more. If not, I won't do more, but thank you all for 4,000 subscribers, and I will see you guys again at 5,000. Alright. See you guys.